Welcome back in, everybody, to Friday's edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Ed Kracz from SI.com. Ed, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, guys. How's everybody doing?
Good to see you, Ed.
Yes.
I
Happy
don't know.
belated birthday to you, John. I know you.
Thank you. Yeah, great week. It's Damo's birthday. It's Sealski's birthday. It's everybody's birthday this week. So
Not mine.
No, not Ed Kratz's, but somebody else's too. I forget. I got to figure it out. But more important is the Philadelphia Eagles and no tampering with Saquon Barkley. Doesn't surprise me. I'm a little bit surprised that Atlanta got a slap on the wrist for tampering with 3 players. We thought it was just Kirk Cousins, but it ended up being 3 players. With Saquon, it was just, James Franklin speaking extemporaneously. I never thought Howie would be the type of guy to leave out a text message personally to Saquon Barkley. Any surprise to you? No tampering for the Philadelphia Eagles.
A little bit of a surprise. I thought maybe the league would, try to make a little bit of an example here of, their rules for one. And if the Eagles had shown any violation of those rules, I'm sure they would have.
I think they might have tampered with Vic, but they're not investigating that.
I was just going to say, I'm surprised they didn't throw Fangio into that hopper like the Falcons had those 3 players that were, deemed tampered with. And
yeah, right.
They were what were they hit with? A 5th round draft pick?
That's it. Like, why wouldn't you tamper? All right. If I'm going to get, in their case, a quarterback, although they drafted a quarterback, that's another conversation. What a weird organization. But if you're in the mix to get a big time player, I'd give up a 5th round pick if I can tamper and get that player. What? That's not preventing me. That is like, all right, go ahead. Who cares?
Yeah, there were some fines involved too, right? I don't know how steep they were, but they're
$250,000, which is
significant
nothing for Arthur Blank. I mean, it's not, maybe. 50 grand for the GM, that might be a bigger thing, but Arthur Blank will take care of that. I was surprised, but I was surprised they didn't ding Atlanta more harshly. I think they should have, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm surprised a little bit that the Eagles didn't get hit. I know Howie's been doing this a long time, so you don't think he'd leave himself hung out to dry like that. But I guess in the end, it was just a stupid thing for James Franklin to say. He looked kind of foolish now for. It's not the first time Franklin has looked foolish. Just check him out on the sidelines some days. Yeah. But that's another story. But I thought if there was any sense of impropriety there, the Eagles would have got hit. But they got away scot clean. And it's not going to make people around the league very happy, at least fan bases, because the Eagles always seem to get away with stuff.
That's the thing, they do.
Yeah, that was the whole story was kind of fishy, though. I mean, James Franklin says something and they're tying it all together. It never really was a big story, in my opinion. I thought it was fishy.
Well, Ed, I wrote about, I think Ed, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Fangio stuff seems pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, the Fangio is more obvious. Yeah.
But I don't think Miami cared. So unless the other team's pushing it, I don't think the league cares. I think one of the reasons the Eagles got some draft capital for Gannon is because the Eagles cared. They were pissed off and they kind of pushed it. And with the Dolphins, they're like, all right, yeah, you get out the door. Nobody likes you. I just don't think the Dolphins cared. So I think that's why nobody's pushing the Fangio stuff.
Yeah, probably right. They were going to get rid of him anyway. But Vic's always made no secret of the fact that he wants to play, to finish his career in Philadelphia. So, he put that out there. I mean, I don't know. Can you charge a guy who wants to, who talks about wanting to leave? Can you charge him with tampering? I don't know. But it's always been kind of out there that Vic wanted to play or coach here in Philadelphia.
Yeah. But you're right. The rest of the league is not everybody, but there's a bunch of teams that are pissed off that the Eagles get away with shit.
Yeah.
I wrote something about Sports Illustrated. I was talking to a couple former GMs who kind of pushed that narrative. And I was like, well, you can't you can't just tie together the Barkley and the Fangio stuff. You have to investigate Fangio separately, and there's no indication they've even done that or begun that or have started that kind of investigation. So to me, the Barkley stuff was always, that's easy. That's a game of telephone, and you just say, well, Franklin misheard Saquon Barkley, and he said something, and it was incorrect. Bang, end of story.
Yeah.
Unless there's a text message or an email, and Howie's been doing this too long to leave that out there. That was always my perspective from it.
Yeah.
But we can turn the page on that. Calais Campbell, where were you? Bleacher Report, I know a while ago said the Eagles had some interest. That's an inside joke, right?
Well, you know how the Eagles operate. They have interest in just about everybody they'll put out there and that's just because Howie's probably talking about these players to see, kind of gauge their interest. If not now, maybe as a rental in October, talk him out of retirement, like we saw with Julio Jones last year and Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph 2 years ago. I'm sure he's talking to everybody. So, there's different levels of interest, I'd imagine, there's, and I don't think they're very serious levels of interest with guys like Calais Campbell and maybe some of the others that the Bleacher Report is putting out there. But, it's a kind of a dead period, right, of the NFL. We're in the middle of June. We still have another 5 weeks to go before camps open. So, people are going to put out there all sorts of stuff just to keep the eyeballs coming in.
Ed, we had you on almost 2 weeks ago, and we didn't have a chance to ask you because it hadn't happened yet with the Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni dynamic from the Martin Frank question. I just wanted to get your perspective on it, what you made of it, and if it's an overblown June story or if there's some truth or some reason for concern on the coach-quarterback relationship.
Well, my overreaction would be those two guys hate each other. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, they have a working relationship. They don't have to be friends off the field. I know Nick's a big family guy. He talks about his family all the time. Heck, he has his kids up on the podium with him after games sometimes to take questions. So he's a big
great pitcher. Which one? Sorry, Nick.
JAKIB. I think it's JAKIB.
Thank you.
JAKIB Sirianni, good pitcher over there.
Don't say where.
No, I don't know. I'm not sure I know where, but listen. I don't think you need to have this. You have to sing Kumbaya all the time with your quarterback, and it is interesting though that Nick talked about kind of pulling away from the quarterback room. I don't think Sirianni was exiled to, this nebulous role, whatever you want to call it. I think this was his decision to kind of pull away from maybe Jalen Hurts, maybe the offense in general, and look at, kind of get that, what is it, a macro view, the big picture? Is that that's
30,000 foot?
The 30,000 foot view. I think that was his call. I think that's kind of how he sold it. And maybe that's what helped save his job when he went into meet with Jeffrey Lurie after they lost down in Tampa Bay was, I'm going to pull back and I'm going to look at this. And, Jalen's part of that. He even made a point, on the last day of the minicamp to say, I'm not going to be spending every waking minute with Jalen Hurts. And does that mean that he doesn't like him? I don't think so. I mean, I think they have a fine relationship. I don't think Hurts hates him. I know Jalen, like what you said, Xander, he kind of, stammered over an answer to what was an innocuous question from our friend Martin Frank. About how he sees Nick's role. He really didn't answer it, but listen, you can overreact to that if you want, but I don't think Jalen doesn't like Nick Sirianni, and I don't think Nick Sirianni dislikes Jalen Hurts. I think they have a good working relationship, and I think they'll be fine. And I think this might work in the fact that they're not going to be, tripping over each other every minute in the hallway or a meeting room. There's going to be other aspects to the offense and defense and special teams Nick's going to look at, and Jalen's going to take, what Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier have to say, probably a little bit more than Brian Johnson and maybe even Shane Steichen had to say a couple years ago. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's part of this, freshening up the offense type of situation, and that doesn't mean they don't like each other. Doesn't mean they have to love each other. I just think it's a working relationship. Kind of like me and John, like we, John doesn't really like me that much, but we have this working relationship.
we despise each other.
Yeah, right.
We just do a good job of hiding it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I'm going to write about that for SI. But I'm starting to think Nick's playing some chess here. Because I think a lot of people are so focused on the play calling, and everybody's uber focused on play calling in the NFL. And I just think it's overrated, overvalued. I think preparation's more important. And, when you do step back and become a CEO coach, the assumption is, what's he doing? What does he do? and that's, Jalen's like, well, he's not calling the plays. What does he do? He's got like millions of things. The guy's got no time in the day to begin with. It's such a big job. But I was starting to think, I think Nick's a good coach. I think he's a great politician. In the fact that if he walked into Lurie's office after the Tampa game, he couldn't because Jeffrey was out yacht shopping. Ed Kracz broke that story, by the way. Well done, Ed.
Thank you.
If he walked into his office and pulled the Doug Peterson and said, you know what? Look at my damn resume. All right, we had a bad end to the season, but I had the greatest run of modern history of Eagles football, 29 out of 32 games. Status quo, double down. You remember when they were 2-5? What did Nick always say? Slap the desk, double down. You got to double down in what you believe in. If he understood, if he went in there and said that, he's probably out the door.
Right.
So Jeffrey never had to order him to change coordinators or bring in a coordinator. Nick made that proactively, made that move. And if it works, guess what? He's going to be the head coach of the Eagles. Kellen Moore's probably going to be a head coach somewhere else. And everything's going to be copacetic. And if it doesn't work, he can say, well, look, I mean, my offense was pretty good. This guy can't. Look at all the talent this guy's got. And he can't. I'm starting to think Nick's playing some chess here, Ed Kracz.
So you think he'll be able to disassociate himself from Kellen Moore if things go south? Because, hey, look at this roster.
I think both ways. I think if things go well, he's going to disassociate because Kellen's going to be out of town because he's going to get another job. And if it goes poorly, he can disassociate and say, hey, man, I had this team cooking. We got to go back to that.
Yeah, but he didn't have this team cooking. I think it's doomed for Sirianni either way. I mean, he can play all the chess he wants, but I don't think there's any checkmate if this thing goes south. I think he's out, because he wasn't cooking at the end of last year. I mean, this is kind of his plan. And if it doesn't work, he's going to be held accountable, I think, and he'll be gone too. And you know who the first person they're going to call is? Bill Belichick, to bring him in here.
He's going to be 73 years old. Him and Jeffrey can have the same birthday party. I think they're both 72.
Yeah. I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. They're going to call Belichick and they're going to say, listen, we got this roster. We need somebody to come in like you. We have your quarterback, like you had Tom Brady. We have a defense, which, you kind of let slip in New England, and you're not going to have any personnel decisions. We'll tap you on the shoulder when we want your input, like they did with Vic Fangio. Fangio was asked about that. How much input did he have in drafting Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean? And he said, they asked me what I thought. I gave them what I thought, and they made the decision from there. So I think that's the role that Belichick would play. Now, listen, you can put that out there that I think they're going to hire Belichick. If this thing goes south, that's fine. But don't put out there my overreaction between Hurts and Sirianni not liking each other, because I was just kidding about that. Okay,
you got your overreactions are reaching all over
me on X. That thinks the coach and the quarterback hate each other. No, right. I don't want anybody at me on that. It's just it was my overreaction. It was kind of a joke.
Yeah,
but I'm not overreacting about
those overreactions, Ed. Everybody's picking up the
I know. But I'm not overreacting to Belichick. I think if something goes wrong with this team, and they're not going to blame Kellen Moore, and they're going to say, yeah, Nick, you're cool. You're fine. You're right. You're coming back. He's gone too. And I think they reset everything.
I think there's different. Like, you're right. If they win 6 games, everybody's out. But let's say they win 10, 11 games. They win a playoff game, and they get they get handled pretty good in the divisional round. What happens then?
Man, hypotheticals, John. That's
Yeah.
like we're
Well,
talking.
Jody, I typically don't throw out, but that's a ode to my old partner, Jody McDonald.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Is that going to be good enough? I mean, listen, this is Super Bowl or bust. And I will say this too, and I don't think it's an overreaction. I think this season has the capability of being a boom or bust kind of season. I think this team could win 12, 13 games, or this team can win 8 or 9 games, and it would be a bust. I mean, that to me is kind of the way I feel about this thing. I think this defense, the fact that defensive line is so young, I can't believe they haven't brought in a veteran. They must really believe in Carter and Davis, but they can't play 100% of the snaps. I mean, they're going to have to be in shape to play a lot, but who's behind them? Milton Williams is a good player.
Yeah.
Last year of his contract, but is he really a guy? I mean, he had half a sack last year. I mean, that's not the kind of production you want out of a defensive tackle. So I think this season, and again, you look at the offense, what's this dynamic going to be like with Kellen Moore? To me, it could be a boom or bust type of season for this team. And I know it's only June, but I think boom or bust.
I gave you the hypothetical because I think ultimately that's where the Eagles are going to be. 11 wins, maybe a playoff win, and then they're out. And that makes it more difficult. It's easy to make the decision if
they suck.
you stink.
Yeah.
And it's easy to make this decision if they're really good. If you're right in the middle there, which I think is the most likely scenario, then it becomes more difficult.
Well, then in my scenario, the boom or bust, I think he's out. I think that Nick Sirianni is out, and maybe Kellen Moore, maybe because they did win 11 games, maybe he gets elevated and they bring in another OC. Maybe they make Doug Nussmeier the OC, but that's so far into the future. It's hard to say, but in my scenario, there's boom or bust. I think they better boom it and they better win 12, 13 games. This 11 middle of the road type stuff, I don't think is going to wash with Lurie. I think Nick Sirianni would be out.
Even at that middle of the road, that'd be 4 straight years of the playoffs. That would be 40 plus wins and yeah, I mean a Super Bowl appearance. I'm with you, Ed, where I'm like, I don't think Lurie's going to settle right now for mediocrity. But on the other hand, is he questioning how that's going to make him look? You know, coming off of Doug Peterson, coming on into Nick Sirianni. And we talked about that this year with, you know, I think part of the reason they kept Nick is because 2 years removed from a Super Bowl after firing Doug, 3 years removed from a Super Bowl, it probably wouldn't be a great look. But I don't know. I mean, if he goes back to the playoffs, I think it'd be hard to move him.
I think it's an easier sell if he goes back to the playoffs and they lose in the first round or the second round, because he can say, listen, we gave this guy 4 years to win a Super Bowl and he just hasn't done it. Howie Roseman has given him this grade A roster. Everybody agrees this is a winning roster. You know, maybe they're light at linebacker, but every team has a positional weakness.
Yeah, every team has weakness.
Yeah, every team has that. So that's where the Eagles choose to go a little bit lighter. Look for value cheaply, like Devin White, like Zach Bond. But yeah, I think that would make it easier to move on. Like, hey, we gave him another year after this epic collapse in 2023. We gave him this year. Yeah, he won 11 games. He got us to playoffs 4 straight years. But it's just not where we want to be. We need to strive to be greater than that. And to us, it has to start in the coaching chair. And that's where I think Nick would be in trouble.
I've been asking a lot of people this week, Ed, and I want to get your thoughts because I'm surprised how many people are quickly turning the page on Nakobe Dean because Devin White had a good spring and Zach Bond had a good spring in pajamas, as Bobby King would say. And I think people leave out Nakobe's coming off Lisfranc surgery. On the first OTA, he wasn't even cleared. He didn't even work in team drills. And then by the second, they're working him back in a little bit slowly. And I think way too many are assuming, oh, he's on the second team. The book is closed on Nakobe Dean. If it's July 22nd, the Eagles open training camp, it's going to be somewhere during that week because they have an early start. Would it surprise you if Nakobe Dean was on the first team as the middle linebacker?
Yeah, I'm not closing the book on anything after spring. We saw in the spring the three players rotate in at the right cornerback spot,
Yeah,
opposite
yeah,
Flay. I mean, we saw them do that. I would think that once training camp opens and Nakobe Dean is 6 months further away from this recovery on the list, Frank, that he's going to get first team reps. I mean, we didn't see it in spring. It was Devin White and Zach Bond. But I think it's going to be just like that right cornerback spot where you saw three guys rotating in. Nakobe Dean is going to rotate in at first team. I can guarantee you that. He's not being put out to pasture here. I mean, they still like him. They still think he's a good player. Howie Roseman talked about it this offseason. They still believe in him. So they're going to give him an opportunity, and it'll come in training camp. But they're just taking it slowly with him. Now, who's going to win that? I couldn't tell you. I don't know if Nakobe Dean, I don't know if he'll rotate in with – maybe a Zach Bond at the inside. Are they really serious about Zach Bond being an inside linebacker? I mean, Bobby King spoke very glowingly of Zach Bond. They have this relationship going back to the time at Wisconsin when Bobby King flew to Wisconsin for his pro day right before COVID shut everything down.
yeah.
And
Had
Zach
to leave
Bond
the
said they met
dinner.
they had
Yeah.
dinner for like 2 hours. And then
Yeah.
word came, everything shutting down. King hopped on a plane. But they have a familiarity with Zach Bond, and I don't know why he didn't get his opportunity in New Orleans to be on the field a little bit more on defense. But, they could have something here with him, and it's going to be a good battle. I mean, people talk about that right cornerback spot. It's going to be a good battle at linebacker because Nakobe Dean, if he's healthy, the Eagles still believe in him, and they're going to play him. And we could see a situation where they rotate guys in, like we'll see probably a cornerback once the season starts. I mean, you're going to have a starter, but I think Quinion Mitchell, being that number one pick, is going to get some time at that spot during the course of the season. We saw it, and I know it was 22 years ago, but Lito Shepherd came in and didn't make a single start his first year after being drafted in the first round. The last cornerback the Eagles took in the first round, he played 12 games. They had Bobby Taylor and Troy Vincent ensconced in those roles, but they still played him 12 games at the cornerback spot. So they worked him in. And I think we'll see that with Mitchell. I don't think Mitchell's going to start, but I don't think he's going to be put out to pasture and play special teams all year either.
How close is he to getting Wally Pipp, though? I mean, you bring up Zach Bond. Fangio loved him. Bobby King loved him. He seems to be also playing pretty good. I'm not saying Nakobe doesn't have the talent, but if he is still struggling to get back on the field, now hopefully he does get healthy, obviously. John talks about the list, Frank, and all that stuff. But look, the NFL is not, at the end of the day, it's a tough business. If he doesn't get on the field, he's not going to have a chance. And that's where I'm at with Nakobe Dean. He better get on the field and show it, or else the business is business and it's going to keep moving without him.
I think he'll get on the field. I think the injury will be fine. I think the question is, can he stay on the field? I mean, this guy's been dinged up. His rookie year, he came in and he was behind Kaiser White and TJ Edwards, and he was fine with that. He played special teams, had a nice role on special teams. It's good to have depth at that spot. No matter who starts or who plays, you still have that third guy, and even Ben Van Sumeren, a guy they liked enough last year.
Beware of the dog. Don't forget Ben. Yeah,
that's right. So it's good to have that depth. To me, I was a little surprised they didn't bring back Sean Bradley, who I think is still out there coming off the Achilles. Then maybe he's one of the guys they bring in, familiarity with the Eagles and whatnot, played at Temple. He played at Temple,
wasn't he?
Yeah, he played at Temple. Yeah, so, I mean, listen, there's several different ways you can go at linebacker here, but right now those top three, they're going to battle it out for playing time. And I'm kind of assuming Devin White's already going to be the guy that's going to probably play the middle, and Nakobe's going to be your off-ball guy.
Has Nakobe fixed the cleat issue? Have you guys heard any more on that?
Yeah, he claims he has. We'll see. I mean, that's a weird story, the cleat.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, you factor in he had foot problems. You hear him talk about the cleats. It adds up. It does add up.
Yeah.
Hopefully they fix it.
Yeah. For some reason, they discontinued the cleats he was comfortable with. And I don't know. He's 23. I would think he could find another pair of cleats. But feet are a weird thing.
Manufacturers, all the different pairs of cleats. We can't find one that works.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out. But you mentioned that right corner, September 6th, Green Bay, Sao Paulo, Brazil. It might be different by week 18 against the New York Giants, but if I just said September 6th, Ed Kracz, Your options are James Bradbury, Kelly Ringo, Isaiah Rogers, Quinyon Mitchell. Throw Cooper DeJean in there if you want. Who's going to be the starting corner opposite Darius Slay against Jordan Love and the Packers? Week 1.
Well, you can discard James Bradbury. He won't be on
Bleacher
the
Report
team.
says Atlanta's interested.
Yeah, you can name 5 teams that would be interested in Bradbury. You know,
Indianapolis, Arizona,
Cardinals, right? Yeah, for
Titans,
sure. I think Arizona is more of a shot than whoever the Falcons. But so you can discard Bradbury, I think, and he's going to play safety, right? He played safety for 2 minutes in minicamp and then he hurt his abductor or something.
He didn't even get out there.
Yeah, right. But he's out. I think you can discount Cooper DeJean because I think he's going to be starting in the slot. I really do. I think DeJean's going to be your starting slot cornerback ahead of Avonte Maddox and Tyler Hall, if Tyler Hall's still on the team. But I think Cooper's going to start at slot. Bradbury's out, so that leaves you the 3 guys, Rodgers, Ringo, and Mitchell. I don't think it's going to be Mitchell. I don't think they're going to use a rookie to start opening day in Brazil against Jordan Love and the Packers. I think they're going to go with experience. I think they're going to make Isaiah Rodgers. I think he's going to be your starting right corner just because of the experience factor. He brings experience. He knows what it's like to play in an NFL game. And this is a tough task going down to Brazil. First of all that travel. We see it with the Phillies going to London, coming back, and they look tired all of a sudden. This is a big game, and it's a lot of travel, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles come out of that game.
And they're going late, and they're coming back, right? It's not like
Right.
a week thing where they're going down and doing all the hubba-blub. They're just going in, playing, and leaving.
I don't know what the Packers are doing, but it's going to be tough for them as well. I mean, there's another team involved here, but we don't care about the Packers because we don't cover the Packers. But I think it's a big ask to go down to Brazil, 13-hour plane ride, whatever it is, eat food that you're not used to eating, sleeping in beds. Who knows what the bed situation's like in Brazil? I mean, are they big beds, big enough to accommodate NFL players? I don't know. So
better get one for Jordan. Yeah, Eagles got Becton and Jordan, my life.
Yeah. Oh, they don't see guys like that walking around the streets of Sao Paulo, I'm sure, but you don't see them walking around the streets of the United States much either.
There's a moving truck right now dealing with bed situations in Brazil for the Philadelphia Eagles.
See, now that's the kind of planning I like. Yes. Right there. June.
And that's why you got to be CEO coach. Nick Sirianni as a CEO coach has got to be on top of that.
You got to be on top of the bed setup for the team.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, that's why I go with Isaiah Rodgers. I'll get his name right. Not Aaron Rodgers or Isaiah Walker, but Isaiah Rodgers. He's going to be your guy. I think that's going to start just because he has the experience. And this, like I said, it's a tough opponent, far, far away from home, unknown betting situation. I think you go with the start. I think you go with the veteran there.
That's what you get. You get all the good stuff from Kracz, Ed Kracz from SI.com/NFL/Eagles does a tremendous job there covering the Philadelphia Eagles. With yours truly, you can even read me if you want, if you go there. But you can.
I'd recommend it. I'd suggest it. Yeah, absolutely.
You can read Ed all the time, and I guess I haven't asked you about Merrill. Merrill's in, baby.
Yeah. Awesome.
Roselle Award, Hall of Famer. Merrill Reese, just a great dude, man.
Yep. Always says hello to you. Always, comes up and talks to you. He doesn't hide behind the persona or an ego or anything like that. Just a regular, down to earth guy. I mean, I think highly of Merrill. I talk to Merrill because he comes up and says hello all the time whenever you're there. And asks how you're doing. And, that goes a long way. That kind of, humanity, when you show that kind of, sympathy or whatever it is. So I just
empathy.
Think the world, empathy. Yeah. I just think very highly of Merrill as a person.
You would think, maybe somebody like that would have this massive ego.
Yeah.
I said, he's a great broadcaster, but he's a better dude. He's like, he's,
and we don't really hear him much because we're usually at the games. Right?
Yeah.
So, we don't, you hear the clips.
I hear the voice. The voice scares me. And Merrill's such, when we're in those press conferences, it could be cutthroat in those press conferences. And, Merrill's such a small guy for those who don't know him. And he's got this big booming voice, and sometimes he's a little bit too close to me, and I'm like, oh, I get startled when he unfurls it.
Yeah, and you have to defer to Merrill, and players usually will when they hear Merrill, they'll take that question, and that's fine. But yeah, I just think very highly of Merrill Reese. I'm very, very happy for him. It almost makes me think like maybe I should go to Canton. Is that going to happen this August? And for the enshrinement?
Yeah.
Part of me is like, I should make the trip just to support him because that's how highly I think of him. And maybe I will.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
maybe we should. Maybe we should make that trip. But congratulations to Merrill. And we'll see him down there soon enough.
Definitely.
And congratulations to you, Ed Kracz, for being Ed Kracz and getting on that betting situation.
And starting Sleepygate.
I expect to see that story up there.
The investigation for Sleepygate is officially underway. Thank you, Ed Kracz, for joining the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, bud.
There's Ed Kracz joining us on Birds 365. Always good stuff from Ed. He always brings it, as I mentioned before we brought him on, and he did as well today, like he always does. We'll take one more commercial timeout, Johnny Mac, and we'll come back and put a bow on the week. It'll be a bow on the week for Birds 365. So we'll come back, wrap up this final Friday edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.